So we've reached the 100 years, this 100-year anniversary. When you think about how it's relevant to us sitting here, this very building that has arguably a 100-year history. 20 years ago, we weren't in the building. It was a pharmaceutical factory. Before that, a battery factory. At the turn of the century, there were kids training across the road in the polo grounds here in Miramar, training to go off to war. Kids that arguably were only barely older than the youngest people that are actually working with me here in this building today.
Gallipoli is important for New Zealand because I think if you look back, this is the first time that we put a large body of people into a war zone, and it ended any notion that war was glorious and exciting and inevitably victorious, so that once the first rock in the pond of someone being killed or wounded started to ripple out. And then when you look at the scale of those ripples, suddenly this wasn't going to be a short war, and it was going to be a horribly tragic and expensive war.
To me, I think the centenary, well, it's really important that we take this opportunity to unpeel some of those myths that have accumulated around those 8 months. We are quite interested in that individual and human experience and really seeing it through an emotional lens as well, and through the words that these individuals wrote, how they recorded, how they reflected their experiences. But at the same time, bringing rigour and accuracy and humanity to that story.
We were approached by Te Papa, interested in us collaborating with them to realise a commemorative exhibition about Gallipoli. The opportunity to take on this role has been truly one of the most extraordinary experiences of my career.
This is the national exhibition. This will set the tone of how New Zealanders remember the Gallipoli campaign for the 21st century, and how people respond to this exhibition is enormously important, not for my generation, but for the generation who are coming through, who are at school now, because they will look back and determine what they think about Gallipoli by what they see at Te Papa.
When I was asked by the board of Te Papa to conceptualise a new, a fresh, a creative approach to telling the story of Gallipoli, I felt strongly from the outset that it would be hard to tell the story of an army with intimacy.
Like all good stories, you need the personal to understand the wider significance, and this exhibition does that.
We chose to tell the story of Gallipoli through soldiers and one nurse who all had recorded their experiences in some way. If we had images, photographs, objects, that was also really an important part of selecting our characters.
We made our selection for the 8 people whose stories we'll tell through, firstly, their diaries. Who wrote the most incredible diaries that speak to us from the past? Then it was critical to us that we found a provincial representation throughout New Zealand in our characters. We also represented the fact that this was the first time that a Māori contingent had fought for New Zealand in a war.
What fascinates me about this exhibition is it's personality driven, and it's a marvellous cross-section of personalities.
We're looking for characters who portrayed youthfulness or boyishness or enthusiasm or cynicism and jadedness and despair.
This selection was carefully and thoughtfully made. Incredible debate, incredible thought was put into this.
The guts of the exhibition is about people, characters. In Weta's initial concept, we came up with an idea to represent these characters, and that character tells a part of the tale of the campaign.
Firstly, we have Spencer Westmacott, and he really typifies that great adventure that many of the New Zealand soldiers thought that they were on.
Spencer Westmacott, a young man who only had one day of war in his life, and he spent the rest of his life thinking about what happened to him that day. And then you look at someone like Percival Fenwick. Fenwick is a Boer War veteran. He knew exactly what to expect, yet the scale of what happens to him on Gallipoli overwhelms him. He realizes that this isn't anything like the Boer War. This is something that threatens to wipe out the New Zealand contingent.
We also wanted to have some words that would take us beyond this 8-month campaign, that was just the first moment in New Zealand's war.
These diaries, they speak of deeply affected and emotional people suffering under incredible hardships.
The Maori or native contingent arrive on Gallipoli on the 3rd of July.
We tell that story of Māori participation quite strikingly and very, very compellingly through Rikihana Kākeek's story. He kept an amazing diary. We know family, and they've been really generous in lending objects and images to us.
For many New Zealanders, their first face-to-face meeting with Maori, as fellow New Zealanders, occurred not here in New Zealand, but on the peninsula.
This is an important exhibition for Te Papa. As a bicultural museum sharing the story of Te Hoko Whetuatu, the Māori contingent and Māori soldiers in Gallipoli, later known as the Māori Pioneer Battalion, is not only a Māori story, but a truly national story. Through the eyes and actions of leaders like Captain Tarangihirua Peter Buck, Chaplain Henare Te Wainahu, and Private Rikihana Kākeek, were able to share the experiences of the Māori contingent in Gallipoli. Koe no rā, koutou katoa, e ngā rangatira, he tuku aroha nui kia koutou.
Knowing that the exhibition has to speak to all age groups, we elected to go with a more modern graphic style.
Often you picture veterans as being 80 or 90, but they weren't, of course. They were 20-year-olds. If they were here today, they'd be playing PlayStation and reading comic books and doing all the things that young guys do, which we've tried to stay away from a sort of stuffy exhibition style. This is what they did. It's all from their perspective, as if they were young men.
The graphic design needed to sway more illustratively to try and engage an audience that may not normally read this sort of information.
Because we're normally designing things that are fictional, it's quite a different mindset that we have to take into this, because we're illustrating events that have actually happened, and so we have to do a lot of research.
A challenging aspect for this project are the large-scale illustrations. Usually we don't work anywhere near this resolution in our conceptual design for film and games.
Te Papa never asked us to bring any form of sort of cinematic approach to this, nor did we have an intent to do so. We just wanted to utilise tools that we're aware of to bring a range of different skills and abilities to bear on this exhibition.
Sound has become a major part of this exhibition, and it's another sort of filmic aspect to the show, much more so than any exhibition that we've done.
I knew from the outset that I wanted to utilise a composer to complement the figures that we were intending to create.
It's a very exciting project because it's like nothing I've ever undertaken before. It's a blending of multiple disciplines. It's very much like a film score, it's like a theatre show score, and it's also like a video game soundtrack. But it's also none of those things because it's an exhibition and we have to move through and read about things and not be distracted from that. So in many ways, we're writing the rule book here for what a soundtrack for an exhibition like this is. It was an absolute pleasure to work with the Te Ate Old Boys, recording some material outdoors just to give it a real sense of life and realism. And we recorded a haka and a couple of songs, and in particular one absolutely haunting performance of a sermon given to the Maori contingent just before their night assault on Chinook Bear.
The Maori sermon before the attack. Everyone talks in their diaries or in their memoirs about how strongly emotional it was.
You are only a handful of warriors amongst the many thousands of men here. They are asking within themselves, what manner of men are these who have come from the ends of the earth? Will they justify their presence? I know that some of us here now will never again stand together. So therefore, my brothers, do not forget that the name and honor of the Maori people lies in your hands today. Go, and the Lord be with thee.
Brothers became characters in our exhibition, and they were a fascinating pair of brothers from Christchurch who ran machine guns at Gallipoli. They captured a trench at Hill 60 and took a Turkish machine gun, and through this investigative process it came out that Gordon's machine gun that he had at Gallipoli and the Turkish one they had captured, which they kept in their barn in Canterbury for the last 100 years, and so those are in the exhibition.
At one level, a military artefact, especially a gun, can be seen as an incredible technical advancement, but at another level, of course, it is a weapon of war. It's played a significant part in actually ending the lives of huge numbers of people, and that is a chilling thought.
The Mahino Hospital ship is in the exhibition, and we tell that story through the lens of a wonderful Auckland nurse called Lottie Legale.
I have a personal fascination with cutaway dioramas in miniature. So really soon as we started talking about the exhibition, I knew that I wanted to do a section of the Mahino. Much conversation needed to be had about building the Mahino as a complete model ship, but inside me, of course, I had this desire to get through all these conversations so I could discuss the idea of building a section of the Mahino that we slice right down the middle so we can look into all the rooms, and thankfully that's indeed exactly what we've been able to do. In the film industry, a great deal of the old school skills that we use in the workshop, especially miniature building, has been offset by the incredible skills and abilities of the digital artists working on these films. So a museum exhibition gives us the opportunity to utilise the combination really of modern technology and the more traditional hand skill model making
Te Papa and Weta are not the only companies that are working on this exhibition. There's a number of companies that work specifically within developing interactives and audiovisual experiences.
Other companies around Wellington have taken up the challenge of building for the exhibition. I'm just amazed at how they have dived into the undertaking that's been tasked them. When we were shown the space that we were going to have to fit the exhibition in, you're standing in this massive building. I mean, Te Papa is an incredibly large building, and you're told that this is the spot you're to fit in this corner of the museum. You start to cook up ideas. How can you create a labyrinth? How can you take them on a fairly complex journey through this very small piece of real estate? That brings its creative challenges, but you put your head together with people like Ben Berard, and you hopefully, through the convolutions and twists and turns, that people immerse themselves and are utterly involved in the stories that are being told and the emotional engagement that we're trying to achieve.
There is that enormously claustrophobic feel to the exhibition, and then you realize that you're not in a trench, you're in a landscape.
As is possibly the case in almost any military campaign, the landscape plays a fundamental part in how that campaign played out. That could possibly be no truer than in Gallipoli. We have told the landscape story in many ways, through projection technology, through illustration, but most fundamentally through traditional miniatures.
This is a highly visual experience. It's got to be.
Fantastic.
You've got the artifact, you've got film, you've got picture, but that's simply an introduction to a story. And you've got an ability then to explore all these different layers, but each one in its way a crown jewel.
So possibly like the magazine cover images of the Vietnam War, the single arresting image, the large-scale visual. The idea that should you take a person and increase them in scale, there's a natural desire as a human to explore them with your eyes, discover what's unique about them in their oversized state. What started to formulate in my mind, and what the guys immediately started sparking of, was that these characters that emote at a depth of detail and emotional intent like nothing we'd undertaken before.
What fascinates me about this exhibition is it's personality driven, and so just simply walking around and seeing each of the personalities is a wow, and then you suddenly realize that that's simply an introduction to a story.
To try and capture an exact representation of the person was beyond challenging and in some ways inappropriate. We therefore made the decision to do a nationwide casting call to find the people that best represented the photographs of the soldiers and of Lottie. We photographed them, we digitally scanned them, we then face cast them, we arm cast them. We built up a significant library of artifacts that represented that individual reenacting this historical person. We then clean up the scans in the 3D department, and then we set to task one of our larger 3D printers. It builds a three-dimensional replica of the different components, then begins the process of sculpting. And when you look at the sculptures, you'll appreciate the depth of focus required to sculpt every detail that is in the human face and body. The sculpture then goes into the mould shop, and we undertake a process called silicon matrix moulding. Into this, you pour the silicon that replicates the human skin, and then into the paint shop. The paint shop is where we do all of the painting of our silicon sculptures. The sculpture moves through to the hair department. It requires us to put stubble actually into the face, one hair at a time. And when all that is done and we finally assemble the object, those components will hopefully look real. Even though we tried to cast Lottie from New Zealand, we ultimately chose a woman in our workshop.
Quite often technicians get pulled into various shoots for reference for lots of different projects here. That's what happened with Lottie. I just got pulled in and I seemed to be a fairly good match, so I ended up becoming this.
The clothing was as complex, and in some cases more complex to make, as the silicon components within these giants. Showing these soldiers at scale and sharing the intent of these people give them presence and power and cause a moment of reflection. As an audience member, you can view and become engrossed in and engage with at maybe a level that you never could a one-to-one scale mannequin.
For the first time, really, we are honouring that generation on a scale that they deserve.
We were extremely lucky to have this outstanding contribution from the NZSO, and it was just such a pleasure and an honour to work with our country's best classical musicians, bringing the musical element of this exhibition to life. We worked together over 2 days. We had about 70 performers and 20 assistants and orchestrators, recordists, librarians, all come together to create this amazing part of the score. It was just an awesome experience.
My most horror-stricken moment was when I saw a heavy shell burst fair in the middle of 10 platoon. A dozen men emerged from the smoke, reeling, staggering and collapsing in every direction. More than half the platoon was lost in that moment.
Something that, in fact, Jed Brophy said early on when working with them is that in the entertainment industry, very rarely do we get a chance to do a project like this one that feels that it matters so much. Often we're just entertaining, but writing these pieces specifically to these people 100 years ago was a very profound experience for me, and is something that I will always remember.
For so long, an exhibition is often in your head or, on plans. So it's going to be great to see it packed with people. I think visitors to the exhibition will find a great variety of things to really engage with, any age, wherever you come from.
I don't think that Te Papa has ever developed an exhibition that is so rich in content. Many people will want to go through it and then come back and through it again.
If you're looking for more information about Gallipoli, you'll find it. If you want to see really stunning objects, to hear an amazing soundtrack, to see some amazing sculpture, compelling historical footage and photos, really wonderful storytelling, I think it's there, and I don't think anyone will be disappointed.
I think that you will have an understanding of what these men went through and the experience And I think that will be quite moving for a lot of people.
It was quite overwhelming. I think it was quite emotional for us to see our granddad up there like that and to see him depicted at such a young age.
We've all heard about it. We all understand that it happened. But I think this exhibition will really get you into the minds of these people.
Just looking at how the curators and the writers and everyone else has picked up their part of the exhibition and run away with it has been fascinating.
We wanted New Zealand's Te Papa exhibition to speak in its own voice, to speak in its own unique and original voice. That was so much the driver and the inspiration behind why we created the exhibition in the way that we have. When I look at the exhibition and I think about what we have most benefited from, it is that extraordinary interaction with this incredible group of people. Their efforts given tirelessly with huge enthusiasm and with a respect that I can only find pride in when I reflect on how it was given. You know, I can't ask any more of myself or our team for that, and that's what I will remember the exhibition experience by. At the time, these men could never have imagined that their actions would be represented in the future in New Zealand with such reverence.
I think if the veterans were alive today, they would feel that justice had been done and that their generation had been recognised. And I think even though they wouldn't recognise some of the techniques of how it was done, they would certainly feel very pleased indeed with the spirit with how their story was told.